Audio Jungle.
Derek Ford's team. I don't know. This team seems like so. I don't know.
There's a,
I don't even
there's
know
a
how to
lot of
explain
hype,
the Colts.
surrounding this team, especially around the quarterback position. They were one play away from potentially making it to the playoffs with Gardner Minshew holding it down for 15 weeks, 12
Yeah,
weeks, something like that.
they went 9-8, home record 4-5, away record 5-3, strong away record, obviously. And like you said, they were a fourth down conversion away from making the playoffs. And that was the play that got criticized when they threw in a guy who like really didn't play the entire year instead of Jonathan Taylor to catch a pass, and he just dropped it. So
Yeah.
definitely an interesting decision that at the time got a lot of hate. I think I defended it actually thinking back to it because I was like, it would have thrown the defense off. Like
Yeah,
nobody would have
least
thought that guy
second
was
guy.
getting, and he just didn't make the play. And then you were like, well, why didn't you just give it to Jonathan Taylor and he'll make the play? And that's a compelling point.
Yeah, that's honestly a tough play to argue, giving the ball to probably one of the best running backs in the NFL and the most critical play of your season. But I mean, I understand the thought process of, oh, the whole defense is going to be keying in on Jonathan Taylor in this situation, probably. And I mean, had that play worked, Shane Steichen looks like
The
an
genius.
absolute god. So it was obviously super high risk, super high reward throwing to a guy with 3 targets the entire season. But just the fact that they were in that situation with Gardner Minshew playing quarterback for the entire year, for the most part, was pretty impressive.
Yeah, tough year for them. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor started this season with like that contract / injury
Yep.
problem where they
Yeah.
couldn't really figure out a contract for him and he was hurt, whatever. And then obviously Anthony Richardson goes down very early into the season. And I mean, those are like your two top guys. So you obviously adding that back into the mix this year, JT with a full off season, full camp, everything. And then same thing with Anthony Richardson, who ended up getting shoulder surgery. I mean, that's probably for the better. Shane Steichen, though, he obviously has the sauce. He clearly was he's a difference maker as a head coach. I mean, to keep this team afloat with Gardner Minshew and after being able to pivot because Gardner Minshew's game and Anthony Richardson's game are like obviously completely different. So to be able to pivot on the fly like that and also be able to stay relevant throughout the entire season, he clearly has the sauce. And as we're watching the Eagles, he was clearly the guy kind of keeping the Eagles offense like during their
Afloat,
big
yeah.
season. Like he was obviously the X factor in kind of concocting all of that to be successful.
I do want to mention one thing about this 2023 season. I was looking at just like who they played and everything. And I have this pulled up right here. So listen to this list of quarterbacks that they played from week 9 on in 2023. So they played Bryce Young, Mac Jones. They had a bye. Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, Jake Browning, Mitch Trubisky, Taylor Heineke, and Aiden O'Connell. And then I think the last game was against it was CJ Stroud. So like that's a very manageable, winnable stretch of games, especially if you're the better head coach, I think. So that certainly played a huge factor into them even being remotely close to having a spot at making the playoffs last year. Like those are
Yeah,
games where you gotta win and take advantage of a weak stretch of quarterbacks, and they did. They put
I
themselves in a great spot going into the last game of the season, and they were one play away.
Yeah, and I want to hold on to that while I'm making my 2024 prediction because that's a great point. Uh, Something that I think needs to absolutely be talked about is Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson has played 18 games since high school.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have his stats from last year?
I don't. I'll read them off after I'm done, but I'm not going to call him a bust as of right now. He was obviously coined as like a raw talent, like coming into the draft. I think everybody kind of thinks that. But Anthony Richardson, outside of his athleticism and strong arms, does do some of the little things well that you don't see like those raw quarterbacks coming into the draft have. He stands tall in the pocket. He uses his eyes to move defenders out of the throwing lanes. and then he absolutely throws the ball with anticipation. And his pocket presence, he avoided sacks at an impressive rate when he was in college, and I think that's going to serve him well in the NFL as he's adapting to the game, being able to avoid the sacks. Um, Strengths, I mean, obviously he has great arm strength and he's an absolute athletic freak. We saw
Yeah,
that being displayed during the combine
he's
and
a
some
physical specimen.
play during last season. Weaknesses, accuracy. I don't think he'll ever be like a precision passer per se, but he needs to stop airmailing deep balls because that happens a little too often. And he needs to improve his aim to be taken a little bit more serious as a quarterback in the NFL. But you wanted to go into, do you have anything to add on that? And then you can go
Yeah.
into his stats.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did cover most of it. Absolute physical specimen. I think it is important that you mentioned he's played what 18 games since high school,
Literally.
and has been extremely raw. I think those are pretty important things, but the fact that he's already showed some good flashes, even though he only played 4 games, I think is important too. I think that accuracy is something you can improve, but I think it only gets to a certain level and then it starts to plateau after a certain amount of time. So I think just like with playing experience and practicing and building chemistry more so with his teammates and those wide receivers, I think we'll start to see those things start to improve year over year. But obviously super raw right now. Um, I was just going to read off his stats
Yeah,
for
go
the
ahead, read
4
those
games
off.
that he did play. Yeah. So through 4 games, his completion percentage was just under 60%, 59 and a half, threw for 577 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And then on the ground, he had 4 rushing touchdowns and 136 yards. So this guy, obviously super raw. I think he's going to be a phenomenal fantasy quarterback. I think we still have to wait and see how he's going to be as a full NFL quarterback. Because as we know, fantasy and real life are different. But I mean, I think it's in there somewhere. It's just a matter of Shane Steichen developing him and growing him in that offense and growing him as a quarterback.
Yeah, the biggest knock on him obviously is he just hasn't really played much football.
Yeah,
And to go out and play however many quarters he played, like 12, I think it was, and to go down with an injury like in your first year, it
not great.
definitely hurts the development process for him and what he could possibly be. So I definitely need to see him play a full season this year, and hopefully we get that because I think Anthony Richardson does have all the tools to be like a freak at the quarterback position, and I want to see him play a full like all the time. Like
Yeah,
I don't want it to be Joe Flacco during halfway through the season.
not at all. No disrespect to Joe Flacco. He had a great run at the end of last season. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I loved Anthony Richardson coming out. I just want to see him play more is what it comes down to. I mean, I think he's in a great offense. I think Shane Steichen is honestly probably one of the best coaches that he could have in the NFL at this point because I think we saw just how well Shane Steichen and Jalen Hurts work together, and I think that Anthony Richardson's tools as a quarterback are better than Jalen's.
They
So
definitely are.
I think that Shane Steichen is probably one of the perfect coaches that Anthony Richardson could have landed himself with. It's just a matter of staying healthy, playing football, and that's pretty much what it comes down to for him.
No doubt. There's two areas of improvement that I feel like that this team needs to have. One, I don't think that they get this season. The first thing I'm going to talk about is their secondary. I don't know if I can name one of their corners. If you watch the
Great.
joint practice between the Cardinals and the Colts, I mean, Greg Dortch, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride were legitimately, and Kyler were dicing up that secondary. Um, so I think that that's obviously going to be an area of improvement for them in the future. I don't know if they really handled it that much in the draft. I know they drafted one corner, but unless if he's exceptional, I feel like that
Yeah.
that's still an area that's going to be pretty weak. Um, and the second skill group position, or not skill group position. The second group of guys that I'd need to see play better is their O line, which 2 years ago they had a great O line and they were
It was
like
elite.
awesome. And then last year they like fell off. And I know that they took two guys in this last draft. They took two tackles, and they still have Quentin Nelson. So if they're able to get that group of guys to gel and play better football together, I need to see the O line also take a step forward this season, not another step back.
Yeah, I'm looking at their like projected starting lineup here, and it's three new guys in the secondary, two new corners, and a new safety. Um, there's definitely going to be some growing pains with a situation like that. Um, I mean, and the corner they took was in the sixth round. So, like,
Yeah,
are there actual expectations of this guy coming in and making an immediate impact? Probably not.
no, it's fair.
But yeah, the O line is something that the Colts like have always been really strong at, but this past year they were not great. Um, I think it's a blessing that Anthony Richardson is athletic as he can. If this O line's not going to be what we've seen them in the past, but I do expect them to take a step forward, and they are lucky that they have such an athletic quarterback that is good at avoiding pressure and avoiding sacks.
I did want to talk about their two players that they got in this year's draft class. They got Liate Latu,
Yeah,
which everyone like he could easily be the best. He could win the rookie defensive player of the year, and I wouldn't be shocked at all. It was just that he had a lingering neck injury that he had to medically retire for. That is a little bit of a red flag, but he's cleared. He got drafted in the first round. Good for him. But I do think that early in his career, he can make an immediate impact.
yeah,
And then another guy that they took, which he was going to be a first round pick, but ultimately fell out, is Adonai Mitchell. And the theme that the Colts at this point, it looks like, is they're just looking to take like the most athletic freaks that you could possibly take in the draft and have the tools and then see if they can mold it and figure it out. They obviously have done that the last two seasons with Anthony Richardson, Latu, and Adonai Mitchell. So I do like what they did in the draft class. I don't know how good Adonai Mitchell was going to be, but on paper, these two picks look great.
yeah. I completely agree. I remember watching Latu against Colorado.
Colorado,
Not saying much because that offensive line was terrible, but it felt like that guy was in the backfield every single play.
bro, it
Um,
was
it
rough.
was wild. It was wild. Not
We
great for
bet on
Colorado bettors.
Colorado.
Yep,
We
that
bet on
sucked.
Colorado and got smoked.
Yeah, that sucked.
Um, Before we get into some of their strengths, because we just went over their weaknesses, do you have any like additions or subtractions to the roster that you think are important to point out?
I mean, they didn't really change this roster a ton. I mean, they lost Gardner Minshew, Zach Moss, Isaiah McKenzie, Jacob Martin. They only added two guys in free agency, if I'm correct, in Raekwon Davis and Joe Flacco, which I think it's good to have Joe
Aren't they
Flacco
both
back
old as
there.
hell?
Yeah, yeah, but I wasn't really gonna
Sorry.
say much about Raekwon Davis, more so Joe Flacco, because obviously Anthony Richardson is coming off of an injury, and Joe Flacco does still have it, I guess, after last year's season, which was pretty impressive, that 5 game, 6 game stretch, whatever. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of turnover in this roster. So yeah.
Um, I'm right with you. A strength that I want to go over with this team, and I want to see what you think. I absolutely love this skill group. Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr. Josh Downs is a sneaky wide receiver in the NFL. He's a dog. I hope that he
He's
heals
good.
up from the high ankle
I like
sprain.
him.
And then Adonai Mitchell, who is again like just a big athletic freak. This has a potential to actually be like a special group of like young talent in the NFL that it feels like not that many people talk about.
If and Michael Pittman Jr. has been a pretty solid receiver since he got to the league. The quarterback play that he's had since he's entered the league just hasn't been great, if I remember correctly. I can't
I mean,
remember who is.
it's been Philip Rivers, it's been
Yeah,
Carson
on the back
Wentz,
end. On the
it's
back
been
end.
It's
Gardner
been
Minshew.
Gardner Minshew, like, the Colts have not been able to really roll out a solid
Yeah.
quarterback for a while.
Yeah, and Michael Pittman somehow is kind of just hanging around right there, like right around like what the 15, top 15, top 20-ish guy with old and bad quarterbacks.
Definitely.
Um, so I think he's a guy
Matt
that probably
Ryan
yeah, man, Jesus,
Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, and
God,
fucking
Philip
yeah,
Rivers.
Philip
Yeah,
Rivers.
that's rough.
Absolutely awful quarterback stretch that the Colts have had.
Yeah, poor guy. But yeah, he's hung around and been good for what he's had at quarterback. Um, I think them getting AD Mitchell in the second round honestly might be a steal because,
Yeah.
like you said earlier, we saw a lot of people that had him as a first round guy, and for them to get him in the second round at 52, um, to pair alongside of Michael Pittman and Josh Downs is going to be solid. I think. I mean, I think he has a really high ceiling, and he doesn't have to go out there and be the guy right away. If at least that's what it feels like if you're a second round wide receiver. Um, the conversation might be different if he did end up as a first round guy. But I think that alleviates some of the pressure off of him to come in there and feel like he needs to put up 1,300 yards in his first season. Um, I also
Yeah, I
think
mean,
that
obviously, Michael Pittman Jr. is the number 1 there for sure.
yeah, exactly. Um, I was also just going to say that Jonathan Taylor is what he is. He's been when he's out there, he's a top 5 guy. So I think they have
Yeah.
a really high ceiling on this offensive side of the ball with these skill position guys.
Yeah, I need to see obviously JT play a full healthy season again. When he did, he led the league in rushing yards and had like 20 touchdowns and was just an absolute dog. So,
Yeah.
yeah, getting him back to who he is definitely probably a big priority of his. He got his contract, he got paid. It looks like he's fully healthy, so hopefully we get that. Um,
Also, I was just gonna say I've been seeing some stuff out of camp with AD Mitchell, and I've seen some good flashes of him. I haven't seen a ton of stuff, obviously, but I have seen a few good things out of Colts camp for him leading into the season. So
my question for you is what is a successful season for the Colts? Because Colts fans are going to have an absolute they're not going to be right about where they're at, like where they're going to be this season. They're probably all thinking that they're a lock for the playoffs. Um, and I thought that that point that you brought up earlier, the stretch of quarterbacks that they played throughout the course of the season, kind of maybe skewed their numbers, their record a little bit, you could probably
yeah,
say, and it won't probably be the same as it was last year. So what is a successful season for the Colts? Because I don't know. I haven't talked to you yet, but I have a feeling that you don't think that this could potentially be a playoff team. I could be wrong though.
Before I answer that, I want to say one other strength that I think this Colts team has, and
Go ahead.
I think it's Shane Steichen as their head coach.
Oh,
Obviously, he's been a head coach for 1 year, but I think we've just seen his offensive mindset and carry over like when he was with the Eagles, phenomenal OC with them, and then just this first year as a head coach for the Colts, um, absolutely turning oranges into lemonade with who he had on offense. So
he
I
made
think that's
Zach
a
Moss look like a god last year.
yeah, I think that that's a legitimate strength of theirs is having him as their head coach.
I
But
completely agree.
what does a successful season look like for the Colts? Shit gets real for them this year. They have the what is it here? Fifth hardest schedule in the league through the first 12 weeks. They play Houston, Green Bay, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Miami, Houston, Minnesota, Buffalo, New York, and Detroit. So they need to basically, in that 12-week span, if they can somehow manage to go 500 in that 12-week span, they're back. Their last 5 games are all winnable games, and they could end up as a playoff team. The likelihood of them winning, staying at 500 by week 12, I don't feel great about it, especially with Anthony Richardson returning off of shoulder surgery plus lack of experience as an NFL quarterback. So, with that being said, I think a successful season for them is probably if they make a playoff somehow and like I said, stay at 500 for that first 12 games, that would be phenomenal. And I think you absolutely have to be happy with that. I think Colts need to level expectations to let's get a full healthy season of Anthony Richardson and let's go out there and try and make the playoffs. Obviously, that's the goal every year, but um, I think a successful season is Anthony Richardson is upright by the end of the year and they win 8 games
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, I have a prediction written here, 7 wins. I said they're a year away.
Yeah,
Um, I'm right with you. I think the only thing that matters if you're a Colts fan this season is watching Anthony Richardson develop as a passer. That's all that you
yeah,
need to watch happen. If he makes the mistakes, if he throws interceptions, if he's pushing the ball downfield, if he's still throwing with anticipation, if he's growing over the course of a season, even if it's ugly at times, you need to have him go through all of those growing pains because he missed out on his rookie year. And he needs to, this is essentially his rookie year where he needs to have those ups and downs. And if it happens, it happens. And you can't take it that serious because ultimately, if he gets to do all of that, he's going to be a better player in the long run. And I think that's extremely fair to say. You just need to have that season with Shane Steichen, go through your growing pains and grow as a passer. And the running game's there. We know that it's there. Let's see
yeah.
him really develop into an NFL passer.
There's definitely going to be growing pains. Like we've said at the beginning of this, he's played 18 games since high school. It's almost inevitable that there's going to be a tough stretch somewhere throughout this season where he doesn't look great. And that's going to be okay. That's part of it. That's what
It
happens
is.
when you have basically a rookie quarterback in there, especially with how tough this front 12 of their schedule is. They
And their
also have
division.
and their division's just a mess too. So I guess that's a positive for them in this situation is they don't have like the strongest division, but
I would think
I mean
I think that the games are
Houston's
winnable.
strong. Yeah, Houston's strong, but
There's just no slouches in that division. I mean, I think the Titans might be, but there's the Jaguars and the Texans. Those aren't slouch teams. I don't care what anyone says.
right, but we could easily sit here and see the Jaguars just go like 6-11, maybe 7-10. I don't think that's going to happen, but like it's not out
Yeah,
of the realm of possibility.
yeah. It's up in the air. That anybody can beat anybody in that division.
Yeah, I mean we saw it last year. Now everybody's going to be a little bit different this year. The Jags were terrible down the stretch,
Yeah,
and the Colts were right in it with the Texans in that last game, like we talked about. And I think Tennessee is going to be a little bit better, if not more competitive per se. But yeah, I agree with you when you said that you think they're a year away. I think that that's probably a realistic timeline as a Colts fan. But listen, if you're a Colts fan, still go out, enjoy the season, grow with Anthony Richardson, because if he goes through these pains, he's going to come out of this so much stronger, and you could be in a absolute phenomenal spot at the beginning of next season.
yeah. And I I said it when we went over A Rich in the beginning. He's not as raw as people lead him off to be. I think that he is a little further ahead than like what people give him credit for. I
Yeah,
really do think that. So I think that if he can build on top of those skills, I think that he has an opportunity to be a very good quarterback in the NFL, no doubt.
yeah. With that being said, fantasy wise, I don't think I would hesitate to take him if he's sitting there.
He's going too early for my liking, honestly. All the it's just the quarterbacks. Listen, I get taking Anthony Richardson. He's a dog. quarterbacks, they go way too, or some of the quarterbacks go way too early. He's one of them.
I was gonna say if he's sitting there and like Jalen's off the board, Josh Allen's off the board, Kyler Murray's off the board, some of those like dual threat quarterbacks are off the board and he's the last one, I think I would probably feel comfortable taking him.
I mean, brother, he's I don't know. It sounds like you haven't been doing your mocks. He goes, it's Josh Allen and then Anthony Richardson.
That has not been happening in the mocks that I've been running, but that's way too early. I agree. If that's what's
It's
happening, then I agree.
he's the group of players of Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Anthony. Like that's the group right there this year.
The Lamar Jackson disrespect is crazy.
Lamar, we went over it already in the MVP
I know.
episode.
I know.
I think people are just bored of him, honestly.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know if I'm taking him as the second or third quarterback off the board, but what do I know?
I don't know. You've never won a championship. I have. All right.
I've never won a championship.
All right. So Colts 7 wins. You said 7 to 8 wins. Anthony Richardson needs to grow and develop as a passer. I think that all sounds great. And hopefully the Colts fans get to watch this special talent develop this year, because I know I want to see it happen too, because getting to watch him play is primetime TV.
I have one thing that I wanted to mention, and it's Colts fans, just be patient. I know last year you guys had a winning record and were like one play away. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be very tough to see that and not immediately think you're going to win 12 games because you get Anthony Richardson back. So just be patient. It will pay off at some point, but I don't know if it's going to be next year.
Yeah. I could definitely see the Colts fans thinking that's the case, because Raiders fans think year 2 of Alex O'Connell gets them 12 wins. So I couldn't imagine what the Colts fans think.
But there's honestly no shot that Colts fans are as unbearable as Raiders fans.
That's probably, I mean, hopefully we figure that out.
I hope not. I hope not.
I hope we figured it out. I hope this video blows up and we figure out what the Colts fans are doing.
Yeah, me too.
All right, brother.
All right. Go Birds.
Peace.